Hey guys, before we start this video, I just want to give a thank you to Max Steppa, Alexandra, and Atri Ray for their support on Patreon. And my deepest apologies if I pronounced those names wrong. Thank you very much for your support, I greatly appreciate it. Alright guys, so some of you may have noticed when I was doing the attacking video, if you look at my foot when I was attacking, it goes into the ground just a little tiny bit while we're attacking. And that is due to a bug in how we handle our player falling. So we're going to remedy that right away before we move on. So I'm just going to say in here, if player manager dot is interacting or input handler dot move amount is greater than 0, then we're going to just come out here and we're going to say my transform dot position equals vector3 dot lerp between my transform dot position and the target position. And we're going to put that over by time dot delta time divided by 0.1f. You can make that into a variable if you'd like for speed, but for our case, that's fine. And then we're going to say else my transform dot position is equal to target position. This code, put simply, just makes sure your model is always going to the target position and it's not behaving oddly when your player is interacting or moving. And if we just jump into the game here, that looks wonderful. We are attacking and our feet are no longer sinking into the ground. Okay, next on the list we have one more bug in the falling system we have to look at. So, if I run up these stairs here and come off, this happens, and we definitely don't want that. This is a very easy fix, and it's just a simple typo I made. Right here, in the handle falling where it says locomotion, we're just going to put empty. So basically, if you weren't going to play the land animation, you're just going to come back to the empty animation layer, which will just make you defaultly set back to your player locomotion. And if we test that in game now, we come down, and there we go. No weird, continual falling forever bug. And that looks much better. Alright, next on the list is the camera bug. So some people told me that when they start the scene or change scenes, the camera does not follow them. I narrowed this down to the singleton being the problem for some reason, especially on some Unity versions. I don't know why, the script just did not want to pick up the singleton. So here we're going to come down to awake, and we're going to say target transform, this is on the camera handler. We're going to say find object of type player manager dot transform. This means when you start the script, it will search the scene for a player manager. There will only be one of those in the scene, and that will find you. And we'll get the transform of the player, and that will be the target transform variable. Now, next, we're going to need to edit one more thing. We're going to come over here to the player manager, and where it says camera handler equals camera handler dot singleton, we're just going to change that, and we're going to say camera handler equals, we're going to say find object of type camera handler. Because once again, when you first load into your game, there should only be one camera handler in your scene. So we'll find that camera handler, and you'll be good to go. And that concludes our bugs. So let's save that, and if you jump into the game and test it, you will be fine. So, moving on, let's open up our sword, because today, we're going to add a damage collider to it. So let's add a box collider to it, and you want to put this on the sword model itself that sits below the weapon pivot. And I'm just going to take a look at mine here and put mine in isometric view, and I'm going to edit this box collider so that the collider itself is on the blade of the sword, because this is where we're going to do the damage when we swing the weapon. Now, the collider size doesn't need to perfectly match your model. A lot of video games actually use damage colliders that are bigger than their weapons or wider for better detection. And sometimes video games go a bit too far, which is why it looks like you're getting hit by the air and not the player itself swinging at you. And that also could have to do with latency, but I digress. So, let's go down and add a component, call it damage collider. We're creating a new script here. So we're going to put this again on the sword, the same place as the box collider. That is important. So let's open this up and jump into Visual Studios, and we're going to erase our start and update method, and as is tradition, I know someone said that, we're going to put our namespace up here. Then we're going to go up to the top here and we're going to say collider. We're going to call this damage collider. This is going to be our variable, which will pick up our box collider. And on awake, we're going to say damage collider is equal to get component collider. Then we're also going to say damage collider dot game object dot set active true, so you want the game object active. We're going to say damage collider dot enabled equals false. And one more thing, we're going to say damage collider dot is trigger equals true. Now, enabled means that the collider itself can be enabled or disabled, but the game object remains active. That's important. So we're going to create a method down here, and we're going to call it enable damage collider, and we're going to say damage collider dot enabled equals true. And then we're going to create a method called disable damage collider, and we're going to say damage collider dot enabled is equal to false. See, when we disable it, it keeps the whole game object itself active, but just this one component on the game object can be enabled or disabled, which is very useful and helpful, especially for the situation. Next, we're going to say on trigger enter. You remember we used this in the last episode, and we're going to say collision. So when this collider meets with something else, we're going to say if collision.tag is equal to hittable. I'll say hittable for now. We might change that though. So if it collides with something that has a tag, it's called hittable. We're going to say collision.getComponent player stats. And actually, let's make that into a variable. Let's do that. We're going to make that into a variable. So we're going to say player stats equals collision.getComponent player stats. And then we're going to say if player stats does not equal null, so if it is there, we're just coming in here and we're going to say player stats take damage. And then we'll make a variable for, we'll call it, what are we going to call this? Let's just call it current weapon damage. All right, and let's create that up here as an int. And just like that, now if you swing the sword at something and the collider is on, and if it hits somebody, which is a player, it will deduct the weapon damage from their total health. And that's really cool. That is a really great feature. So next we're going to go and make a tag. If you guys want to do this, go up here to your tags, click on any game object to see this, and then we're just going to create a tag and call it hittable. Again, I might change that. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of that actually, but for now it's fine. So back into the scripts. Let's close out all this excess stuff here so it doesn't look as confusing. We're in the weapon slot manager right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a damage collider variable, and we're going to call this one left damage collider. And then we're going to create a damage collider variable again and call this one right damage collider. I think you guys know where I'm going with this. Just similar as we did before with the left hand slot and the right hand slot. I'm just going to rename this to left hand and right hand damage colliders so it's very clear what this is. Okay, and then below low weapon on slot, I'm just going to create a private void. I'm going to call this load left weapon damage collider. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to left hand damage collider is equal to left hand slot dot current weapon model dot get component children damage collider. And what this does is it searches our left hand slot variable that we created a few episodes ago. It searches it for the current weapon model and then searches that weapon model for the damage collider script. And just like that, we have a connection. And that is a really nice way to do it. And we actually don't need to check for null here. You'll see why in a second. So we're going to say load right weapon damage collider, right hand damage collider equals right hand slot and current weapon model. Same thing as before, but with the right hand. Now, on our load weapon on slot, what we're going to do is when we call this, we're obviously loading a weapon. So the weapon is not going to be null because this is only called when we spawn a weapon in our hand. So right below left hand slot dot load weapon model, weapon item, we're going to say load left weapon damage collider. And just like that, that will load the collider from the model in our left hand. Perfect. Very clean, very nice. Looks really good. All right, let's save that. Okay, so next we're going to have to create a method for opening the damage colliders on the weapon manager. And you're asking yourself, but you know, Sebastian, we just did that on another script. Well, that's right, but I'll explain in a second. So let's just say open right damage collider, right hand damage collider dot enable damage collider. So we're calling the enable damage collider method from our right and left hand damage colliders. We're going to do this for both, and then we're going to create two methods for closing them. So open left and open right, and close left and close right. And the reason why we're doing this is because this weapon slot manager sits right on top of our model, where the animator is, okay? And there's a thing in Unity called animation events, and they're very handy. And if any methods sit on the model, or any scripts sit on the model, sorry, you can use any public methods from those scripts. So we're actually going to call opening and closing our damage colliders from animation events. And I'm just going to use a region here to make this look neat. I'm going to say handle weapons damage collider. And then I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to say end region. I'm going to put that below it all though. Copy that there and come right down here and paste. And now when we hit this, it's going to look even more neat because we have everything to do with our damage colliders right here in front of us. And we can just collapse that just like that. So if any of you guys have never worked with animation events before, I suggest looking them up, but they're very simple. So we'll get that in just a sec. We're going to go to our attack animation. For me, it's one-handed light attack 01. And I'm just going to click on my player's model here. Not the game object, but the actual model. And we're going to come here to window and hit animation. And I'm actually going to drag this animation window over here because it's on my second monitor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the scene view in a sec. And let's find my player's game model here. Because this is a really cool feature that Unity has. So we're just going to look at our guy here. And I'm actually going to pick the animation from the dropdown. And when I move this little scroll bar, you see how you can actually see your player performing animation. So we're going to find a place where we want to open the damage collider, and I'm thinking it's right here. So when on the attack should you be able to do damage? We're going to hit add animation event, and then you're going to see a little window over here. You see the animation event, no function selected. We're going to hit open right damage collider. And now in the future, we're going to make a method to select either right or left depending on what hand you're using to attack. But for now, because we don't have two-handed enabled, and we don't have any method of detecting that, we're just going to use the right hand because we're going to use our left hand for blocking and our right hand for attacking. So I'm just going to click open right damage collider, and then I'm going to go ahead about 2 frames. You can do a couple more if you want, and I'm going to hit close damage collider. So this will basically decide how long you want the damage colliders to remain open. And I'm going to close that. Right, so that's all well and good, but what if you want to have enemy stats on an enemy instead of just having player stats? Well, let's create something for that. We're going to say enemy stats, and I will show you how to make that script just in a second because it's almost identical to player stats. I went ahead and created mine. But for now, I'm just going to put this here, equals collision.getComponent enemy stats. And you know what? Actually, what we're going to do, we're going to make this even neater as well. So we're going to take this. We're going to go up here to hittable, and we're going to say if collision tag equals player. We'll do this to the player, and then we'll copy this. We're going to come down here. Then we're going to say if collision tag equals, and we're going to say enemy, because we'll make a tag for enemies as well. And then we'll do the exact same thing as we did up there. We're going to say if enemy stats does not equal null, we'll say enemy stats dot take damage, current weapon damage. Very simple, looks very nice, looks very clean, easy to read. So for the enemy stats script, I'm just going to jump over here and show you what I have in just a second. So it's basically identical to the player stats script, except there's no animation handler. It has been replaced with an animator, and there's obviously no health bar because the enemy doesn't need an on-screen UI. And previously, where I had animator handler.play target animation, I've just replaced it with animator.play. Also, I have a typo here. This should not be damage 01. This should be death 01. So let's go to our tags here and let's remove that old tag. Let's make a new tag for enemy. I'm going to save that. So basically in the scene here, all I have is an enemy model, and I'm going to make sure that tag up there, right here, says enemy. I just have the enemy stats script on them, and I have the animator set to humanoid, much like our player, so he's able to play the animations that our player can play. I'm going to add a capsule collider to him, and I'm just going to also add a rigid body. I'm going to freeze the position and the rotation just for the sake of the demonstration so he's not moving around. And I'm also going to edit the capsule collider's settings here so we don't walk up on top of them. Let's make the radius about 0.4. Yeah, that looks nice. Alright, let's drop in game and test this out. And just like that, we can hit a guy and we can kill a guy. And if you check it out here, you can see that his health is actually going down when I hit him with my sword. And if his health reaches 0, he should fall over and collapse. Yep, there he goes. Great job, guys. It's actually starting to feel like a game now, so if you made it this far, give yourself a pat in the back. This is pretty cool. Got a lot of really neat features put in. Please remember to drop a like in this video because it does really help my series get around. I greatly appreciate it. And if you're feeling super nice, go check out my Patreon. We're super close to the next goal. And if we do happen to hit that goal, I will run an additional series alongside this one with no loss of the current upload schedule, which means you guys will have a second series to watch that will come out not as frequent as this one, but it will still come out once every couple weeks. And this schedule will still keep on the same pace that it is at right now. So again, guys, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.